Paul, who was kind while we were dating, started to verbally abuse me along with his daughter, Teresa, after we got married. Despite their treatment, I continued to save for Teresa's college funds. Eventually, a college acceptance letter arrived, and we decided to celebrate, which also coincided with Paul's promotion. When I returned home from shopping, I found garbage bags filled with my books and clothes left in the yard. In the bedroom, Paul, Teresa, and my mother-in-law were throwing my belongings into garbage bags. "Hurry up and leave. We can't invite Grandma over because there's not enough room with you around," Teresa said. "Exactly. We don't need a failure of a wife. We'll just take the college funds. Thanks." Paul laughed, shaking his shoulders. "A bottom dweller making $10 per hour. Get out, useless mother." "Bye-bye," my mother-in-law added. Something inside me snapped then. "I'll leave," I said. I went to the yard and carried the remaining garbage bags to the car. Sitting in the driver's seat, tears of frustration overflowed. I bit my lip and vowed not to let this be the end. Remember this, I am Kelly, a 53-year-old housewife. 12 years ago, I met Paul, who was 44, through work. We got along well as we worked together. Paul, who was cheerful and bright, seemed dazzling to someone as introverted as me. When he proposed, I was flustered and wondered, am I good enough? During one of our dates, he revealed that he had a 9-year-old daughter, Teresa. I was surprised to learn he was divorced, but soon grew fond of Teresa, who was affectionate and innocent after meeting her nervously. Our modest wedding went smoothly, and our married life started off well. However, the happy days did not last long. I lost my parents to illness during my student days and was raised by my uncle and his wife, who ran a business after accepting the proposal. I introduced Paul to my uncle and his wife after getting their blessing for our marriage. Next, we visited Paul's parents to greet them. When my mother-in-law learned that I was raised by my uncle and his wife, she seemed clearly displeased. Maybe because of that, she started to make snide remarks to me after we got married. She would come over unexpectedly to nitpick everything. "Kelly, there was a hair in the corner of the stairs. The bathroom mirror is dirty. Don't you clean it every day?" She would frequently scold. "It's outrageous that you work even though you have a small child." These days, everyone works even with small children. I switched to part-time so I could be home when Teresa comes back from school. I gently objected. My mother-in-law glared at me. "How dare you talk back to your mother-in-law, insolent wife." I never asked why they divorced, but I could guess it might have been because of her nagging. "Come on, Mom. If both of us work, we can save up for Teresa's college funds sooner," Paul said. But as years passed, like his mother, Paul started to verbally abuse me as well. "You come back from work halfway through the day, and this is the meal you prepare. Don't you care to comfort your tired husband?" "I'm sorry, but it's tough to prepare 2 side dishes every day besides the main," I replied. "You just want to slack off. Everyone manages to do it," he said. My mother-in-law, who was a full-time housewife, never used store-bought prepared foods and forbade me from using them as well. So I found time to prepare meals in advance late at night or on weekends when the family was asleep. Just when I thought the issue was resolved, Paul started insisting on bringing lunch from home to save money, which of course I had to prepare, and he found fault with that too. The lunchbox contains frozen food, and the main dish is leftovers. "You're cutting corners too much." "Preparing all the small dishes from scratch is hard," I said. "Don't talk back. You're the wife. You know I hate pre-prepared meals. Are you trying to annoy me?" Paul raised his voice. "No more frozen or ready-made meals from now on. But it's the wife's job to think about the family's health and prepare meals. Do you want to make me and Teresa sick?" "You're terrible," he continued. "I'm sorry, I understand. I'll do what you say from now on," I replied. Arguing back would only lead to hours of nagging, so it seemed better to comply quietly. It meant less time for myself, but it couldn't be helped. I had a hobby that brought me joy. After Paul and Teresa went to bed, I would jot down ideas in a notebook, imagining what it would be like if those things existed. This hobby, which I kept secret from them, was a great stress reliever. As a child, I had received an award for a summer vacation research project, and this was a continuation of that interest. Dealing with complaints wasn't limited to my mother-in-law and Paul. Initially, Teresa seemed like an innocent and adorable child, but as she entered upper elementary school, she began to act selfishly. Her mood swings would dictate whether she was affectionate or demanding extra pocket money. Then she would insult me in front of her friends, ignore me, or worse. Being manipulated by Teresa's moods left me exhausted. Seeing Paul mistreat me, Teresa began to mimic him, finding amusement in it. It was a phase of adolescence, and from Teresa's perspective, I was just the woman Dad brought home. Resisting was natural. If she wouldn't warm up to me, I thought I should try harder to get along with her. I made efforts to understand Teresa's feelings without scolding her harshly for misbehavior. Even when she hurled insults, I didn't snap back, but calmly explained, "It's not right to speak to someone older than you like that." I always attended school events and helped with homework after returning from work. Whenever Teresa was sick, I would take her to the hospital and take time off work to care for her. I had no experience in raising children, but I poured love into her because she was the child of the person I loved and raised her with all my effort. However, it seems my feelings didn't reach Teresa. As Teresa entered high school, she needed a lunchbox. Unlike Paul's volume-focused meals, the appearance and variety were important for a high school girl's lunch. I woke up at 6 a.m. every day, making the lunches with care. "Put fried chicken in tomorrow's. I want a hamburger in mine," they would request, making it quite a challenge. Yet they often came back with their lunchboxes untouched. When I asked why, they would say nonchalantly, "I was in the mood for pasta today," or "I passed by a store and suddenly wanted to eat bread." "I woke up at 6 to make these. I wish you would at least try them," I said. Upon hearing this, both quickly became sullen. "You change your mind about things too, don't you? Don't be so sanctimonious. It's annoying. A mother should naturally make lunches for her children." Teresa's hostile tone hurt me more than Paul's words. "Sorry," I said. When I apologized, Paul became even more arrogant. "Don't get cocky just because you made lunch. It's nothing special. You should be grateful we even eat it every day," he said. Their complaints about too many vegetables or the taste being too strong were the last straw. I felt more sadness than anger. Talking with Teresa and Paul always made me feel miserable. The promise of sharing household chores made at the beginning of our marriage was quickly abandoned. "Even if we both work, you're home by the afternoon. That doesn't really count as working. We get home in the evening. It's only natural for the person with the most free time to do the chores," Paul said. "I'm not free at all. By the time I finish cleaning and preparing dinner, the night is over," I explained, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. Even on weekends, when I asked if they would help, Paul and Teresa would either lay around with their phones, lying on the sofa, or lock themselves in their rooms playing video games. It was as if I didn't exist in their field of vision. "Hey, old lady, make me some tea," Teresa would say. "I want coffee. Bring it to the living room. I'm playing games with Teresa," Paul would add. Teresa still refused to call me Mom, sticking with old lady instead. "Could you help me a little after dinner? I have a meeting with the Women's Association." I finally spoke up. Paul clicked his tongue in annoyance. "What? Let us rest at least on the weekend. You see we're playing, right? Do you intend to disturb our parent-child bonding?" "Oh, but you're a stranger, so it can't be helped," he said. The word stranger pierced my heart like a blade. "What's with that face? Got a problem?" Paul threatened. "Who do you think allows you to live in this house? A disposable part-timer like you standing up to me isn't 80 years too early. Faced with their attacks, I bit my lip and swallowed my complaints. Though Paul boasts as a middle manager in a small to medium enterprise, his income isn't impressive. He makes more than I do as a part-timer, but that's about it. Paul's dominance might stem from controlling the finances. Before our marriage, I mentioned I'm not confident in managing finances. Then I'll handle it that way you can relax, he said. Fooled by his cheerful smile, I agreed to hand over my salary to him. He would allocate funds from our combined incomes for living expenses and Teresa's college fund. Despite his salary increasing over the years, our living expenses somehow decreased. Lately, I've been given only $10,000. Half goes to saving for college fees, and the rest covers food, daily necessities, and miscellaneous expenses. I need at least $5,000 more, and I want some pocket money for myself. Housewives don't need pocket money. Put the $5,000 for Teresa's education into the account first. I'll check every month, Paul said firmly. I stood my ground. Paul, you often buy luxury watches and brand-name suits. You nag me about saving money and are stingy with it. You seem to give Teresa a lot of pocket money. Why can't I buy what I want? I desperately appealed to Paul. I work too. It's ridiculous to need my husband's permission to buy clothes or go to the hair salon. Both Teresa and I have our social obligations. You don't need to keep up with mommy friends. Dressing up is just a waste of money for you, Paul retorted. Teresa also joined in, looking pleased to participate. Children cost money. Stop complaining. Then I'll increase my working hours. The extra can be my pocket money, right? I suggested. Paul was shocked. That's out of the question. You can't even manage household duties perfectly as it is. What if you neglect them even more? Mom would definitely oppose it, he said, mentioning his mother. I gave up on arguing. It was difficult for someone as timid and inarticulate as me to stand up to the two of them. Yet I harbored a faint hope. Maybe if Teresa gets into college and enjoys campus life, her attitude towards me will soften. Seeing Teresa happily going to college with the money I saved, perhaps Paul would respect me more than before. But my hopes were dashed as easily as they were formed. When the heat of the day began to increase, Teresa's acceptance letter arrived. A few days later, Paul came home with news that made Teresa cheer. Dad, you're becoming a manager. That's so cool, Teresa exclaimed. I got the provisional notice, but now it's confirmed. My salary and bonus are going to skyrocket, Paul announced. I listened with a disheartened feeling. I knew not a penny would come my way. I was certain I would still be forced to economize as before. Yay! Buy me an awesome bag to celebrate. Teresa said. Of course. Let's invite Mom over tomorrow for a celebration dinner. Kelly, prepare a feast. All homemade, of course, Paul instructed. Watching Paul and Teresa call my mother-in-law, I sighed quietly. This time, it seemed like I might be able to spend some peaceful time without any snide remarks. The next day, I went to the supermarket to buy ingredients for steak and soup. Despite the rainy weather, Teresa and Paul were in high spirits from the morning. When I arrived home and got out of the car, I glanced at the yard and tilted my head in confusion. A garbage bag, open and beaten by the rain, was left out. It wasn't there when we left. A bad feeling washed over me as I approached the garbage bag. I was shocked. Inside the bag were my clothes. I quickly tied it up and entered the house to confront Paul and Teresa, only to find my mother-in-law's shoes at the entrance. Hearing noises from the upstairs bedroom, I rushed up to find Paul, Teresa, and my mother-in-law cheerfully stuffing my books and clothes into garbage bags. What are you doing? I demanded. Oh, you're back. As you can see, we're throwing out trash. The old lady's stuff is all cheap, Paul said casually. As they continued their task, I snatched the garbage bag from them. Stop. Don't do this without asking me. It's okay. You're no longer needed, Paul replied. The two of them excitedly raised their voices at me, leaving me bewildered. We've already paid the entrance fee for college, right? And we've saved up the $870,000 for 5 years of tuition. Your role as an ATM is over. Amazing how you saved up with just a $10 per hour wage. It's all thanks to me forcing you to save, Paul said proudly. I stared at Paul, astonished. Why was he speaking as if it were his own achievement? Paul continued, full of pride, after kicking out the previous wife. I wanted to bring Mom here, but first, we thought of saving up for college. Finding a submissive woman to save up would mean Teresa and I wouldn't need to save. You seem submissive enough and just right to double as a housemaid. But Dad, you were wrong, Teresa said, puffing out her cheeks. She couldn't do the housework perfectly, and she lectured me even though she's an outsider. Totally useless. My mother-in-law glared at me in agreement. We married you, a parentless older woman. You should be more grateful to Paul instead of always complaining. The two surrounded me, saying whatever they wanted. So hurry up and leave. We can't have Grandma move in with you hogging the rooms. Exactly. We don't need a failed wife. We'll just take the money, Paul added, pushing the garbage bag toward me. The bottom dweller earning $10 per hour. Get out, useless mother. Bye-bye. Something inside me snapped. Then I'll leave, I said. I grabbed my valuables, transferred my clothes and books from the garbage bags to a suitcase, and left the room. Heading to the yard, I also moved the rain-soaked garbage bags to the car. Sitting in the driver's seat, tears of frustration spilled over. Paul never had any affection for me. To be treated as nothing more than a housekeeper and ATM, how much more could they belittle me? I was furious. Biting my lip, I vowed in my heart not to let this be the end. Remember this, I thought. Eager to escape from those two, I drove a short distance before pulling over to call my uncle without revealing too much. I poured out everything, and my uncle, furious, immediately arranged for an empty room in a singles dormitory for me to use until I found a place to move. I decided to accept his kindness. Fortunately, only my clothes got wet in the rain, so I dried them at a laundromat near the dorm and carried them to my room. As I stored my clothes in the chest of drawers and organized my valuables, I began to feel slightly more at peace. During our relationship, Paul had been truly kind, and I believed I was cherished. Even after his attitude changed post-marriage, I kept telling myself, he's really a kind person. Things will go back to how they were. With Teresa, I thought we just needed time to get along, and with my mother-in-law, I believed it was natural for in-laws to clash. But faced with reality, I finally woke up. No matter how much I tried to make amends or the effort I put in, it was futile with people like them. They would pay for trampling over my feelings. First, I visited my uncle's company to ask for a referral to a good lawyer. I went to the city office to pick up divorce papers and completed various procedures. Eventually, I received a message from Paul stating, I filed for divorce. After I left, neither Teresa nor my mother-in-law bothered to call, perhaps enjoying their life without me. A month of peaceful days passed until Paul contacted me again. I was working on my computer when I saw his name on my phone screen and decided to ignore it. I had been expecting his call, but I was busy. I let it go to voicemail. Soon, Paul's tearful voice came through. Kelly, please answer the phone. Something terrible has happened. After the call ended, my phone kept ringing persistently. Hurry up and come out. Help us. It's going to be bad if it stays like this. He left crying messages on the voicemail and called like a man possessed. Eventually, I gave in and answered the phone. What do you want, Paul? I'm busy. Can you get to the point? Paul hesitated on the other end, taken aback by my sharp tone. Oh, well, I called Teresa's college, he said, sniffling. They said she has withdrawn her enrollment, so she is not a student there. What's going on? Exactly as they said, I replied matter-of-factly. I canceled the enrollment. The prep money's gone, but they refunded the tuition fees to my account. which helps a lot. Withdrawal. Don't make decisions on your own. Paul yelled. Poor girl. She worked hard to get into college. Oh, really? I said, unimpressed. I didn't know, Kelly mocked. With the allowance you gave her, she was busy going to nightclubs and rock concerts until morning. Hardly the behavior of a student. That is, Paul stumbled over his words. I've never seen her study once. So you chose a college where money would do the talking, right? She studied when you weren't looking. College isn't just about studying. You've taken away her chance to learn other things, Paul argued heatedly. Oh, my mistake. It could have improved her twisted character, right? I returned his statement with heavy sarcasm. Why are you doing this? Do you have a grudge against us? Paul asked, bewildered. She told me to get out, called me a useless mother. Who does she think made her college possible? How do you think I felt saving up all that money? I said. Holding on to such words, you're petty. Well, there's money in the account, right? Paul replied. Yes, I said, and the call abruptly ended. Sighing, I returned to my work on the computer. Less than an hour later, the phone rang again. Reluctantly answering, I was greeted by a frantic Paul screaming, Why can't I withdraw the money from your account? So you couldn't. I feigned ignorance. Paul started to rant and rave. I was refused at the bank. Of course, I changed the account holder's name. You can't just do that. Ah, no. Kelly, where are you? Paul's voice sounded desperate, almost begging. Without money, Teresa will have trouble enrolling in another college next year. Return Teresa's money. Return it. That $250,000 is my money. I scoffed at the absurdity. If you stop all the lavish shopping you do, you should easily afford your beloved daughter's college fees. Ah, Paul was flustered. I need money because I live at the bottom, so the soon-to-be manager or your beloved mother should take care of it, I said with heavy sarcasm. I'll have a better salary as a manager, but I'm drowning in debt. Mom's on a pension, Paul admitted hesitantly. Drowning in debt. I realized he didn't want his weaknesses known. Both Mom and I are having a tough time, so please at least spare us the compensation, he pleaded. Tough, huh? But I'll be claiming compensation properly later. Take care, I emphasized my point and hung up. The day after being kicked out, I went to the bank and changed the account holder's name, anticipating Paul might try to withdraw money upon learning of the college withdrawal. If Teresa had been serious about her studies, canceling her college enrollment would have been heartbreaking, but given her carefree lifestyle, it wasn't. I chose this route without hesitation. That night, I received a voicemail full of insults from my mother-in-law, which I promptly deleted. Later, through a lawyer introduced by my uncle, I filed for compensation from Paul. Predictably, he resisted. Paul accused, knowing I don't have money, demanding compensation is just cruel. Why should I even have to pay? I provided for Kelly, treated a failed wife kindly, and didn't even cheat. What's there to complain about? Running off with the enrollment money is outrageous. If anything, we should be receiving compensation from you. So I thought I'd wait until Paul changed his tune. A few months later, I received a call from my sobbing mother-in-law. Kelly, please help, she said, her tone as imperious as ever. It seemed her character would never change. Long time no see. What's the matter? I asked leisurely, though I could guess the reason. They're telling us to vacate this house, she said. Well, it can't be helped. It's my house, after all, I replied. My mother-in-law gasped in surprise. Didn't Paul tell you? When I got a job, my aunt and uncle transferred this house to me. I invited Paul and Teresa, who were living in an apartment at the time, to live with me, so it's in my name. This is the first I've heard of it, she sounded dumbfounded. Is that so? Well, anyway, my uncle was furious when he found out I was kicked out and said he'd proceed with selling the house, so I'm going along with it. I'm not kind enough to let the people who kicked me out live there for free. So you're really going to sell it? She asked. Yes, there's a viewing this weekend, so please move out by then, I replied. That's impossible, my mother-in-law shouted. I was kicked out in 15 minutes from my own house. I said calmly, the sale of the house is already decided. It would cause trouble for the real estate agent and the viewers, so please move out soon. Is Paul there? I asked. Paul seemed to have been listening nearby and took the phone. What do you want? He said. I took a deep breath and replied in a low voice, who do you think allowed you to live in that house? Paul was speechless. Ah, that's a relief. How does it feel to hear those words? Damn it, I'm not paying any compensation. See if you can get it, Paul yelled. I was told to discuss this through a lawyer, I said, exasperated. Paul continued to yell. You with your low salary plan to leech off compensation. Pathetic, but I'm not paying a cent. Are you sure you want to be so confident? I asked. I said this with a mix of disbelief and annoyance. I have plenty of evidence. The abusive words you, Teresa, and your mother hurled at me are recorded and noted. While you forced me to economize, you squandered money on luxury goods. There's no escaping this. A mother saving for her child is natural, and a wife should obey her husband. That's right. If you have something to say, earn more than me, Paul retorted, both making a scene with their vulgar attitudes. Return the college funds, thief. If you really don't, we'll sue you. Suit yourself. Enough, both of you. Teresa tried to calm her mother and Paul over the phone. I'm really angry at her for stealing my important college funds. That's the lowest a parent can get. Teresa, you're right. You're looking forward to college so much. It's heartbreaking. Paul's voice sounded like he was on the verge of tears. But it's okay. There's next year. If Dad becomes a manager, our salary will increase and life will get easier. That's true, Paul shouted with apparent joy. So let's stop begging her. Let's quietly move to an apartment and hand over the house. If Teresa says so, my mother-in-law muttered in a reluctant tone. Be grateful for Teresa's kindness. All right, I'm hanging up now, I said, exasperated, ending the conversation. The next call came the following day while I was having coffee in my uncle's company room. I could easily guess it was about the same matter. Reluctantly, I answered, knowing ignoring them might lead them to show up at the company. What have you done? Paul was sobbing, sniffling, and with a voice like a scream, he asked. My promotion was canceled and I was demoted from manager to regular employee, sent to a subcontracting factory. What's going on? I sighed deeply. It seemed he still didn't understand anything. You know Acme Industries, right? Of course, it's a super famous discount store chain that's expanded overseas. It's also a major client of our company. You've injured its chairman. Huh! Paul sounded dumbfounded. He was actually planning to end the business with your company, but reconsidered out of respect for me so your company wouldn't suffer. You should be thankful you weren't fired. I don't even remember meeting the chairman. The chairman of Acme is my uncle. After a brief silence, Paul screamed in shock. I moved the phone away from my ear to wait it out. You shouldn't have told me sooner. My uncle introduced himself during our marriage meeting, I replied. I was amazed by Paul's lack of attention. He stopped crying and suddenly pleaded, Come on, mediate for me. It's just a little marital spat. If I become a regular employee, my salary will decrease and Teresa won't respect me anymore. No, you brought this upon yourself, I said coldly. Is that all? I'm hanging up. What the hell? Acting all high and mighty when you're just a bottom dweller, he shouted. Just then, someone knocked on the door. Excuse me, President. Oh, I'm sorry, I said. It's fine. I'm about to hang up, I replied, smiling. Ah, I haven't told you. I'm the president of Acme. Huh, the one with annual sales of $700 million. To be precise, the president of the American branch. Paul fell silent. I could almost imagine his shocked expression. That's a bad joke. Weren't you earning $10 per hour just a while ago? The salary slip you found in the bedroom? Look at the date. It's from 12 years ago when I first helped out at my uncle's company, I explained, trying not to laugh. I kept it as a keepsake. The minimum wage has surpassed $14 now. You really are clueless about America's economic situation. Paul, lost for words, soon spat out a resentful remark. Quiet but lucky. You have a rich relative. Even a useless mother can become a president. Do you think the position of president just falls into your lap because you're a niece? I've been developing product ideas for a while. Some of them were approved in ACMA's planning meetings and became hit products. I was recognized for those achievements. You were doing all that behind my back, he asked. Do I need your permission for everything? I sighed. I wanted to help my uncle, so I studied business management in college. A few years ago, at his request, I started attending board meetings and management seminars. It's the result of my effort. Paul fell silent again. Teresa's college expenses were covered by the royalties from a patented stationery product I developed. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to manage living expenses and savings from my salary alone. If you have money, then we don't need compensation, my mother-in-law interjected. It seemed Paul had put the phone on speaker so my mother-in-law could listen in. Teresa might be listening too. I learned recently that there's property division upon divorce, right? You're obliged to give half of what you earn to Paul, my mother-in-law said confidently. I couldn't help but laugh. What's so funny, mother? Property division is not an obligation but a right each spouse has. One can also choose to waive it, I explained. I could almost see my mother-in-law tilting her head in confusion over the phone. I'm refusing it, so not a penny will go to Paul. We can take it to court if you like, but I'm sure I would win. What? Mom becomes the president of ACMA and I get nothing. That's so unfair, I heard Teresa's disappointed voice. Paul remarked, Kelly, being the husband of a president means you can live in luxury. Forget about pride. This isn't the time, my mother-in-law urged Paul. Paul also agrees, right? Mom, Kelly, I apologize for everything. Let's start over. I won't treat you as a housekeeper anymore, Paul pleaded. Mom, I won't call you useless anymore. So come back. I want a high-rise condo for our next home. Faced with their outrageous demands, my laughter turned into disbelief. I can earn well on my own, so I don't need a useless husband. Compensation will be deposited into my account monthly. If you can't pay, your assets will be seized. Take care. Amidst their shouts over the phone, I hung up and blocked Paul, Teresa, and my mother-in-law's contacts. Paul, who had been showing off at the subcontracting company, ended up being fired after causing trouble. Struggling with living expenses, debt, and compensation payments, he now works non-stop at a factory on weekdays and a restaurant on weekends. Of course, they had to move out of the house and now live in a rundown apartment with Teresa and my mother-in-law. Teresa, who planned to enjoy her college life, lost all motivation to study and lazes around at home every day. My mother-in-law, doing no housework, joins Teresa in mocking Paul for his low salary, leading to constant quarrels. Having secretly saved up money, I moved to a luxury high-rise condo and lived a busy life. I was worried about the backlash from other employees for a former regular employee becoming the president, but they welcomed me warmly. My contributions to hit products have played a significant role. Any gaps in my knowledge are covered by the executives. Free from worrying about Paul and Teresa's opinions, I'm glad to live freely. I plan to take care of myself while enriching both my work and personal life.